Have you ever wondered why some people rise unshaken when life tries to break them, while others surrender at the first sign of pressure? What if the only difference isn't luck, talent, or circumstance, but mental strength? What if, in this very moment, you could decide to master your thoughts, silence your doubts, and rebuild your life from the inside out? Are you ready to discover what you're truly capable of? Let me explain with example. Lincoln, born into poverty in 1809, Lincoln faced repeated failure, personal loss, and severe depression. He lost multiple elections, failed in business, and buried 2 of his children, yet he refused to surrender to despair. Through unwavering mental strength, he educated himself, reshaped his thinking, and ultimately rose to become one of the most impactful leaders in history, guiding a divided nation through its darkest hour with courage and unbreakable resolve. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Earl Nightingale, and today I invite you to consider a truth as old as thought itself. The real battlefield of life is not found in the world around you, but in the world within you. Circumstance, chance, and even misfortune have no lasting power over a mind that has decided to be strong. It is not the weight of the problem that determines the outcome, but the strength of the thinker who faces it. When you begin to master your thoughts, you begin to master your world, and in that very moment the invisible chains of limitation quietly fall away and a new life, shaped by purpose, discipline, and unwavering belief, begins to take form. When a man or woman first begins the journey toward mental strength, the most profound discovery they will ever make is this simple, yet almost unbelievable truth: no one else in this world is responsible for the condition of their mind but themselves. From our earliest days we are taught, subtly and persistently, to look outward for causes, excuses, and explanations. We learn to say that people made us angry, that circumstances made us fail, that the past made us weak, that the world owes us understanding. And in doing so, without ever realizing it, we quietly surrender the greatest power we have ever been given. For you see, the mind is not governed by presidents, employers, teachers, parents, or the random tide of circumstance. It is governed by one authority only, the thinker. That thinker is you. The moment you sincerely accept full responsibility for what you think, what you believe, what you feel, and what you become, you step out of the long shadow of helplessness and into the bright light of self-mastery. You may have been conditioned, misinformed, discouraged, and misled, but none of that changes the fact that every thought that enters your mind must receive your permission to remain there. You decide whether fear will live with you or leave you, whether doubt will control you or be dismissed, whether past failure will be your home or merely a chapter that has already ended. Mental strength does not begin with grand victories, loud declarations, or outward rebellion. It begins in silence with a private decision no one else can make for you. From this moment forward, I am the guardian of my mind, and once that decision is made, something extraordinary takes place. The world has the same problems, the same uncertainties, the same disappointments, but you are no longer at their mercy. You become the ruler of a small invisible kingdom, and that kingdom is the space between stimulus and response. In that space lies your freedom. When something goes wrong, the weak mind says, "Why does this always happen to me?" But the strong mind, newly awakened to responsibility, calmly asks, "What can I do with this now?" Instead of complaining, it considers. Instead of reacting, it chooses. Instead of submitting, it creates. And through this steady practice, responsibility transforms into power, power into confidence, and confidence into a quiet, unshakable strength that nothing on the outside can disturb, because at long last, the leadership of your life has been placed in the only hands that ever truly belonged there, your own. If you will look closely at the pattern of your life, you will discover a truth so simple and yet so powerful that it has shaped every success and every failure you have ever known. And that truth is this: your thoughts are not harmless, passing shadows in your mind. They are living forces that steadily mold the reality around you. Long before a condition appears in your physical world, it has already taken form in your mental world. The house you live in, the work you do, the people you meet, the limits you experience, and the victories you celebrate were first constructed, brick by invisible brick, in the workshop of your own thinking. A thought held long enough becomes an attitude. An attitude repeated often enough becomes a belief. A belief acted upon consistently becomes a way of life. And a way of life, whether noble or destructive, becomes your personal destiny. The average person goes through each day unaware of this silent process. He allows his mind to drift wherever habit, fear, memory, and environment carry it, never realizing that he is continuously issuing instructions to his subconscious mind, and that subconscious mind, faithful servant that it is, works night and day to make those instructions real. If you constantly think of yourself as weak, life will obediently present you with reasons to feel weak. If you hold the image of limitation, scarcity, and defeat, your world will reflect those images back to you in 1,000 subtle ways. But the moment you grasp that your mind is a projector and your life is the screen, a revolution begins within you. You realize that you are not a victim of reality, but the architect of it. This is where mental strength takes its next great step. You begin to choose your thoughts deliberately, the way a master artist selects colors for a canvas. You understand that no matter what is happening around you, you can plant within your mind a new image, a new direction, a new standard. You begin to think in terms of possibility, purpose, strength, and growth, even when the world seems to offer evidence to the contrary. And as these thoughts are repeated, as they are felt, as they are believed, they sink down into the deeper levels of your mind, where they begin to influence your decisions, your actions, your habits, and ultimately your results. You may not see the change immediately, just as a farmer does not see the seed sprout the moment he presses it into the soil. But unseen beneath the surface, a transformation is taking place. The mind is reshaping the man, and the man is reshaping his world. This is why a mentally strong person does not wait for the outside to change before he changes within. He knows that the outside can only reflect what the inside has already accepted as true. And so he guards his thinking with care, with discipline, and with understanding, knowing that every sustained thought is a command, and every command is a blueprint for the life that is now being built before him, whether he is consciously aware of it or not. Within every human mind there exists a continuous stream of conversation, a quiet voice that speaks whether you invite it or not, guiding, warning, criticizing, encouraging, or condemning. And this invisible dialogue, more than any outside influence, determines the strength or weakness of your character. Most people live their entire lives without ever questioning this inner voice. They accept its words as truth, as though it were an authority greater than their own reasoning, and yet that voice is nothing more than a collection of old impressions, borrowed opinions, past disappointments, and unexamined beliefs. If it speaks in fear, you feel fear. If it speaks in doubt, you hesitate. If it repeats failure, you begin to expect failure. And so the undisciplined mind becomes a prisoner of its own internal language. Mental strength, therefore, is born the moment you step back and realize that you are not the voice. You are the listener. You are the one who can choose which thoughts are permitted to stay and which must be dismissed, just as you would not allow a stranger to walk into your home and scatter negativity and disorder. So you must not allow uninvited, destructive thoughts to wander freely through your mind. The disciplined thinker begins to challenge the inner dialogue. When the mind says, "I cannot," he answers, "I am learning how." When it whispers, "You will fail again," he responds, "Every attempt brings me closer to success." When it reminds him of the past, he gently but firmly redirects it to the future. At first, this seems unnatural, even difficult, because the old conversation has been practiced for years, perhaps for a lifetime. But with persistence, a new voice begins to rise, a voice of reason, of strength, of purpose. And that new voice grows louder as the old one grows silent. You begin to speak to yourself as a wise teacher would speak to a promising student, with honesty, encouragement, and unwavering expectation. You begin to realize that the words you tell yourself in private, no one else can hear, are shaping the world you will live in tomorrow. Slowly, a great transformation takes place. Where there was once criticism, there is now direction. Where there was once confusion, there is now clarity. Where there was once fear, there is now understanding. You no longer wait for others to build your confidence, because you have discovered an inexhaustible source within. The disciplined inner dialogue becomes your constant ally. In moments of difficulty, it steadies you. In moments of temptation, it reminds you of your higher purpose. In moments of doubt, it returns you to truth. And as this inner voice is refined, strengthened, and guided by your conscious will, it forms a foundation of mental resilience so solid that outside opinions, passing moods, and temporary setbacks can no longer overthrow it. You become, in the truest sense, the commander of your own thoughts, and thus the architect of the stronger, wiser, and more powerful life that is now unfolding before you. Fear has been the silent companion of mankind since the beginning of time, and yet it is not the terror itself that weakens us, but our misunderstanding of it. The average person imagines fear to be an external enemy, something that arrives without invitation, something that must be avoided, escaped, or endured. In truth, fear is no more than a signal, a shadow cast by the absence of clear direction. When the mind does not know where it is going or why it is moving, uncertainty fills the space, and in that uncertainty fear takes root. The strong mind does not attempt to destroy fear, because it cannot be destroyed. Instead, it replaces it. Just as darkness disappears the moment a light is introduced, fear dissolves the moment a definite purpose is born. Purpose is the organizing force of the mind. It gives structure to thought, meaning to effort, and direction to energy. Without it, a person drifts, and anything that drifts is at the mercy of the current. With it, even the strongest current can be navigated. The moment you decide upon a purpose, something powerful happens within you. Your thoughts, once scattered and uncertain, begin to align around a central idea. Your mind, once a battlefield of worry and doubt, becomes a focused instrument aimed at a chosen destination. Fear does not vanish overnight, but it loses its authority. It no longer commands your actions. It merely reports, and you, guided by purpose, interpret that report and continue forward. Most people wait to feel courageous before they act, not realizing that courage is the result of purposeful action, not the cause of it. When you rise in the morning with a clear reason for your existence, when you can say, "This is what I am working toward. This is why I endure. This is why I persist." The trembling that once filled your heart is replaced by a quiet determination. You may still feel hesitation at the edge of the unknown, but purpose gives your feet the strength to step forward anyway. And with every purposeful step taken in spite of fear, your mind learns a new lesson that fear is not a wall, but a doorway. It is merely the signpost that you are approaching growth. You begin to welcome it, to understand it, even to value it, because it points you in the direction of expansion. In time, a remarkable transformation occurs. You no longer run from discomfort, you move through it. You no longer seek safety in the familiar, you seek progress in the challenging. Your purpose grows stronger, clearer, more deeply rooted, and fear grows correspondingly weaker, quieter, more distant. You come to understand that the strongest people in the world are not those who feel no fear, but those who have discovered a purpose greater than their fear. And once this truth becomes part of your thinking, your life is no longer governed by hesitation and doubt, but by meaning, intention, and the steady, unbreakable drive of a mind that knows exactly why it is here. Mental strength is not a gift that descends from heaven, nor is it a sudden flash of brilliance that changes a life in an instant. It is, in the truest sense, the result of daily practice, of habits carefully chosen, cultivated, and repeated until they become invisible forces that shape your character and your destiny. Every great mind in history, from the philosophers of ancient Greece to the leaders of modern nations, achieved their power not by chance but by the disciplined use of their time. They understood that the hours, minutes, and seconds of each day are like bricks, and each action, thought, and decision is mortar. Build with care and you create a structure of strength. Neglect your hours, and the walls of weakness rise around you unseen until it is too late. A mentally strong person invests time in learning, because knowledge enlarges the mind and equips it to see possibilities where others see barriers. They spend moments in reflection, because without understanding one's own motives, fears, and desires, a mind is like a ship without a compass, tossed at the mercy of waves and winds. They practice silence, because in quiet observation, the mind hears its true voice and learns to distinguish between the fleeting and the essential. They maintain consistency in effort, for mental power is not built in fits of inspiration, but in the patient repetition of right action over time. Just as a weightlifter does not grow stronger by lifting once, nor a musician by playing a single note, so too does the mind require daily exercise to expand, refine, and harden. These habits may seem small at first, almost trivial, reading a page, thinking a thought deliberately, choosing to act rather than react. But over weeks, months, and years they accumulate, compounding in influence until the results are extraordinary. The world, unaware of this quiet work, marvels at the success of the disciplined person, attributing it to luck, genius, or talent, when in reality it is the invisible accumulation of countless right choices, repeated with steadfast determination. And the beauty of this method is that it works for anyone, regardless of circumstance, education, or background. Every person has the same 24 hours, and each can choose how to invest them. To practice these daily mental habits is to take control of your mind, to train it to be attentive, strong, resilient, and wise. It is to step out of the chaos of reaction and into the calm authority of deliberate action. And as these habits take root, a transformation occurs. Problems that once overwhelmed now invite solutions. Challenges that once intimidated now provoke strategy. Life, once unpredictable and daunting, begins to reflect the steady, disciplined inner world you have cultivated. In the end, the daily habits of thought, learning, reflection, and deliberate action are not merely exercises, they are the very tools by which a weak mind becomes strong, a life becomes purposeful, and a person becomes, in every sense, the master of their own destiny. One of the most misunderstood truths about mental strength is that comfort is not the path to growth. The human mind, when left only to pleasure and ease, remains soft, pliable, and untested. It is in discomfort, in challenge, in the situations that make us hesitate and question ourselves, that true strength is forged. The weak mind flees from difficulty, sees obstacles as enemies, and complains when life demands more than it is willing to give. The strong mind, on the other hand, understands that every difficulty carries within it a hidden lesson, a message waiting to be discovered, and an opportunity for growth that cannot be found anywhere else. Every hardship, whether it is failure, criticism, loss, or delay, presents a chance to train the mind to endure, to adapt, and to respond with intelligence rather than panic. Those who have achieved greatness, from inventors to leaders, from writers to explorers, did not do so because the road was smooth or the environment favorable. They did so because they learned to see discomfort as a teacher rather than a tormentor. Consider the man who faces rejection after rejection. The untrained mind grows bitter, loses hope, and surrenders. The mentally strong person pauses, reflects, and asks, "What is this teaching me? What skill, what insight, what patience must I develop to overcome this?" In this questioning lies the power to convert adversity into advantage. The principle is simple: discomfort is neutral, but your response to it determines its effect. The sharpness of a blade comes from repeated contact with the grindstone, and so too does the mind gain strength from repeated encounters with challenge. Each difficulty endured and mastered leaves behind a residue of confidence, a subtle but undeniable assurance that no obstacle can permanently derail the determined thinker. Over time, the accumulation of these experiences shapes a mind that is resilient, disciplined, and fearless, not because fear no longer exists, but because the individual has learned how to move forward in spite of it. And as the mind grows stronger, the world itself begins to change in response. What once seemed impossible now appears manageable. What once caused anxiety now becomes a problem to solve. You begin to notice a remarkable patterns. Life itself starts to conform to the habits of thought, courage, and perseverance that you have cultivated within. Discomfort no longer dictates your decisions. It merely signals that growth is available if you are willing to take it. And so, rather than running from life's inevitable trials, you welcome them. You understand that each challenge is a stepping stone, each struggle a teacher, each moment of resistance an invitation to expand the strength of your mind. In learning to embrace discomfort as a necessary companion rather than an enemy, you awaken the power to face life as it is, rather than as you wish it would be, and in that awakening, the mentally strong person quietly and steadily becomes the architect of a life that is not only successful but truly unshakable. If you desire to become mentally strong, you must come to understand a truth that is often overlooked: the world you live in, while not fully controlling your mind, silently influences it in ways so profound that most people never notice until it is too late. Your environment, meaning the people you associate with, the words you read, the sounds you listen to, the images you watch, acts like water to a plant. If the water is pure, nourishing, and consistent, the plant grows tall, strong, and vibrant. If the water is polluted, sparse, or erratic, the plant wilts, bends, or dies. The mentally strong person pays attention to this invisible current, because they have learned that even the most disciplined thoughts can be weakened by repeated exposure to negative influence. Every careless conversation, every pessimistic remark, every toxic friendship deposits a subtle residue in the mind, and over time these small deposits accumulate until they dictate behavior, limit vision, and weaken resolve. Conversely, exposure to ideas of excellence, to people of character, to words of encouragement, and to images of possibility infuses the mind with energy, optimism, and determination. You are, in a sense, the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, because their beliefs, habits, and attitudes unconsciously shape your own. This is not merely theory, it is a law as certain as gravity. A mentally strong person chooses the company of those who elevate thought, who challenge assumptions constructively, and who model integrity and resilience. They select books and media that inspire, teach, and expand understanding. They reduce contact with those who drain energy, spread negativity, or encourage weakness. This does not mean isolation, arrogance, or judgment. It simply means wisdom in deciding which voices, words, and influences are allowed to echo in the most private corridors of your mind. And as you do this consistently, an extraordinary transformation occurs. Your mind, once crowded with doubt, fear, and confusion, begins to operate with clarity and precision. Your thoughts, no longer interrupted by the constant chatter of destructive influence, become a tool of creation rather than a battlefield of distraction. You begin to notice that challenges, once overwhelming, are now opportunities to act decisively. Decisions, once difficult, are now guided by your inner compass rather than the shifting opinions of others. And the most remarkable part of this principle is that it compounds over time. Every positive influence reinforces another. Every constructive habit strengthens another. The cumulative effect is not merely resilience or strength, it is the quiet, steady emergence of a life in which your mind is your master, not your environment, and in which you, for the first time, realize that you are free to shape your destiny by controlling the influences you allow into the inner world where all change begins. The mentally strong person understands that strength is nurtured quietly, deliberately, and consistently, and that the guardianship of their environment is among the most powerful acts of self-discipline they can perform. Thinking alone is not enough to change a life. A person may cultivate the strongest, most disciplined thoughts, fill their mind with purpose, courage, and clarity, and yet if those thoughts are not translated into deliberate action, they remain nothing more than idle dreams. Mental strength finds its ultimate expression not in ideas, but in the consistent alignment of thought and deed. The weak mind hesitates, debates endlessly, and hopes for external circumstances to change before taking the first step. The strong mind, however, understands that the outside world will never conform perfectly to desire, that conditions may never be ideal, and that the true measure of character is the willingness to act despite uncertainty. Every action taken in alignment with purpose strengthens the mind, reinforces belief, and builds the foundation upon which success is constructed. Consider the difference between imagining yourself fit and healthy and actually rising each morning to walk, run, or train. The thought alone produces no muscle, no endurance, no vitality. It is only when the thought becomes action that the body begins to transform. The same is true in every realm of life. A disciplined mind that remains idle is like a powerful engine sitting in neutral. It has energy but no motion, potential but no achievement. Action serves as the bridge between the internal world of thought and the external world of results. Each deliberate step taken transforms abstract ideas into concrete reality, converts vision into experience, and gives the mind tangible evidence that it can accomplish what it conceives. And as action is repeated day after day, the mind itself is transformed. Courage grows, fear diminishes, confidence accumulates, and clarity replaces confusion. Habits are formed, momentum is created, and the individual becomes unstoppable in the quiet, deliberate way of a river cutting through rock, not by force, but by persistence and alignment with a natural course. Acting in alignment with thought also prevents the mind from being hijacked by doubt, indecision, or distraction. The longer an idea sits unexpressed, the more vulnerable it becomes to fear, negativity, and rationalization. By converting intention into action quickly, the mentally strong person locks their thinking into motion, making success inevitable through consistent, directed effort. Over time, this principle compounds. One small, purposeful action leads to another, one decision to act strengthens the next, and the life that once seemed reactive and uncertain begins to reflect the disciplined, intentional, and focused thinking that now governs it. Ultimately, the mentally strong individual comes to understand that thought and action are not separate, but two halves of the same force. The mind conceives and the body executes. One without the other produces stagnation, mediocrity, and frustration. Together they produce mastery, achievement, and a life shaped not by circumstance but by deliberate will. To act in alignment with your mind is not simply a strategy. It is the very essence of transformation, the living proof that mental strength is more than belief, more than attitude, more than intention. It is the force that converts thought into reality and dreams into a life that can be seen, touched, and experienced every single day. Persistence is one of the quietest, most powerful expressions of mental strength, and yet it is also one of the most misunderstood. Many people believe that success comes from flashes of inspiration, moments of extraordinary effort, or dramatic breakthroughs, when in truth it comes from the steady, patient, and often unseen act of simply refusing to quit. A mentally strong person understands that emotion is a fickle companion. Excitement, passion, and motivation are valuable allies, but they are fleeting and unreliable. They rise and fall like waves, leaving the unprepared individual stranded when the tide recedes. Persistence, on the other hand, is not dependent upon how one feels in the moment. It is a calm, deliberate decision to continue, day after day, step after step, long after the initial enthusiasm has faded. This does not mean mindless repetition or stubbornness in the face of error. It means steady, disciplined effort guided by purpose, reason, and clear understanding. History is full of men and women who achieved greatness not because they were brilliant, talented, or lucky, but because they persisted when others gave up. They understood that the world does not reward fleeting interest or sporadic effort, but consistency and determination. The mentally strong person treats failure not as a verdict, but as information, a signal that a different approach is required, a lesson to be learned, and a step forward that, though imperfect, moves them closer to their goal. And in this patient persistence, a remarkable transformation occurs. Each effort strengthens the mind, reinforces confidence, and teaches resilience. The obstacles that once seemed insurmountable shrink in proportion to the will that confronts them repeatedly. The mind, trained to persist without emotional distraction, becomes a powerful instrument capable of tackling challenges that would overwhelm the untrained. Perhaps most importantly, persistence produces results precisely because it is quiet and steady. It does not shout, it does not demand recognition. It simply continues like water wearing away stone, until circumstances themselves are reshaped to reflect the consistent energy and focus of the individual. This is the paradox of mental strength. The less dramatic the effort may seem on the surface, the greater its effect beneath it. And as the habit of persistence takes root, the mind itself begins to trust its own ability to overcome, adapt, and succeed. Fear of failure diminishes, hesitation fades, and confidence becomes a natural, almost automatic response. The mentally strong person does not wait for emotion to catch up to intention. They act, persist, and move forward regardless of mood, circumstance, or immediate reward. In doing so, they create a life in which success is not a matter of luck or timing, but of inevitability, the natural consequence of sustained, intelligent effort. In the end, persistence is not merely a tool, it is the very heartbeat of mental strength, the quiet but unstoppable force that transforms thought into reality, dreams into achievement, and potential into a life that stands as a testament to the power of a mind that refuses to yield. When a person finally masters their mind, when thoughts are disciplined, fear is replaced by purpose, action aligns with intention, and persistence has become a natural rhythm. Something remarkable occurs. They stop needing to convince others of their strength, and instead they simply become living proof of what mental power can achieve. The mentally strong individual does not seek validation through argument, boasting, or comparison, because their life itself speaks with authority and clarity. Every decision, every action, every result becomes a demonstration of inner mastery. People are drawn not to slogans or empty promises, but to the quiet certainty of someone who has aligned thought, belief, and action so completely that success flows naturally from them. This is the highest stage of mental strength, not simply to survive challenges or overcome obstacles, but to embody the principles of discipline, courage, persistence, and purpose so fully that the world recognizes it without explanation. In the presence of such a person, doubts fade and inspiration rises, not because they demand admiration, but because their life illustrates what is possible when the mind is cultivated deliberately, consistently, and wisely. The mentally strong individual understands that influence begins with example. Teaching through demonstration is far more powerful than teaching through words alone, because action carries conviction that words can never match. Others may see setbacks, failures, or difficulties, yet when they observe a person responding with calm determination, they witness the practical application of mental mastery in real time. Over time, this example spreads quietly, subtly, and irresistibly, shaping the environment and the people around them. And yet, even at this stage, the mentally strong remain humble, because they understand that truth strength is never a static possession but a continuous practice, a commitment renewed each day in thought, reflection, and purposeful action. They recognize that the greatest power lies not in domination but in self-mastery, and that the most profound influence comes from living a life aligned with principle, integrity, and unwavering focus. By becoming the example of change, they show that transformation is not a matter of circumstance, inheritance, or chance. It is a matter of deliberate cultivation, careful attention to the mind, and consistent action over time. Their life becomes a living message, whispering to all who observe it that no challenge is insurmountable, no limitation permanent, no fear undefeatable, and no dream beyond reach when the mind is strong. And perhaps the most extraordinary aspect of this principle is its silent power. Unlike loud proclamations that fade from memory, a life lived with consistent mental strength leaves a lasting impression, a model that others can emulate long after words are forgotten. The mentally strong understand that the ultimate reward of their efforts is not applause or recognition, but the quiet, steady knowledge that they have taken command of their own destiny, shaped their world through deliberate thought and action, and become proof that human potential is only limited by the strength of the mind that guides it. In embodying mental strength, they reveal to themselves and to the world that true transformation is not merely possible. It is inevitable when one chooses to master the one thing over which they have absolute control, the mind. And so, ladies and gentlemen, as we reach the close of this journey together, let us take a moment to reflect on the path we have walked, the path of mental mastery. We began by recognizing the extraordinary power of taking full responsibility for our thoughts, understanding that the mind is the seed from which every experience grows. We saw how disciplined thinking shapes reality, how fear can be transformed by purpose, and how daily habits and persistence build strength beyond measure. We discovered that challenges are not enemies but teachers, that our environment can either elevate or diminish us, and that action aligned with thought transforms dreams into tangible results. We learned that true mental strength persists quietly, steadily, without dependence on fleeting emotion, and that the ultimate expression of this strength is to live as a shining example of change, inspiring others not by words but by the undeniable proof of what a trained mind can accomplish. The lesson is clear: your life will always reflect the condition of your mind. If you choose to nurture it, direct it, and strengthen it, there is no obstacle too great, no challenge too daunting, and no dream beyond your reach. Everything begins with thought, and everything is transformed through the disciplined, purposeful use of your mind. The question now is not whether mental strength works. It does, with certainty, but whether you will take up the responsibility to cultivate it within yourself. Because when you do, when you decide to master your inner world, you unlock a force more powerful than circumstance, more enduring than luck, and more transformative than anything outside of you. Your life in every detail will begin to change, not by chance, not by accident, but as the natural consequence of a mind that has been trained, focused, and directed toward excellence. And that, my friends, is the promise and the power of mental strength, to take the raw material of your thoughts and transform it into the life you have always imagined, the life you are capable of living, and the life that reflects the very best that is within you.